in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, for you, for you, for you, for you.
So here we are in a 2010 Hyundai Genesis 3.8 liter. Now this is before they had the uprating in power, so it's making about 306 horsepower and 266 pound-feet of torque. That's a naturally aspirated V6. You can also get a 2-liter turbo with the Genesis, but from what I've heard, a lot of people say that the V6 is a little better. Definitely sounds the business, that's for sure. So when you step inside the Hyundai Genesis, what you get is, I don't want to say generic, but it kind of is. What it actually reminded me of is a car we shot last summer, the SL63 AMG. It's got a very similar kind of center console that comes up, that's a bump, that comes up in the center and kind of splits off in their own separate ways. The gauges are a little pushed back into the dash. But other than that, it's really clean. It's simple and clean. The seats are all leather. This has got pretty much every option. It's the GT package. It has a short shifter kit installed on it, which helps a lot. Actually, this is probably the shortest throw of any car I've ever driven, which is saying something because the MR2 it's short, but this is just, it takes nothing to shift this car, and it's in a perfect position. There's another thing to point out. As we all know, if you look at the Genesis badge, it kind of ripped off Bentley. Just throwing it out there. It kind of looks a little too similar to the Bentley badge. Now, that's totally fine. I mean, Ford is copying Aston Martin when you look at the front of their cars now, but to have an emblem that looks a lot like Bentley is questionable. Now, I have to be honest. When I first started getting into cars, maybe grade 6 or grade 7, back when kind of Kia and Hyundai, then Korean cars were just kind of coming into their own, back when Hyundai was making the Tiburon. Even back then, when I started to get to know the makes and the models of cars, I had an unfair bias towards Hyundai. Mainly because, I don't know, I just thought the Hyundai just meant cheap and crappy and just not an overall good driving car. That's just what I thought. Mind you, I was like 13, but that's just what was in my mind. So now to actually get the opportunity to get behind the wheel of, I guess, what would be considered Hyundai's best model that they've ever made is a good experience, actually. And so far, pleasantly surprised. This one is lowered. I want to use the word stance, but it hasn't scraped at all. Near the cam timing change, right above $5,000 actually. Right above 4 is when you get the real power. It's a very linear power band, and it doesn't really die off like I've heard the turbo model does. You get a very consistent pull right from 2 to 6,500 RPM, which is very pleasant. What I do often say is I like reviewing stock cars. Now, as you can see by the exterior of this car, not stock. This is probably the most modified car we've reviewed so far, and it looks really good in my opinion. It looks really clean. It's got a little bit of camber. I'm not the biggest fan of negative camber, but it doesn't have too much. That's the thing, it doesn't have too much. It looks good. Like I said, it doesn't scrape. It's low and it's stiff. It's on coilovers, but it doesn't scrape. The worst thing you ever want when you're trying to drive quickly is to have the car scrape or bottom out. It's the worst thing. Second gear, $6,000. Gets nice and loud. Gets really nice and loud. All it has for exhaust is aftermarket mufflers. Still has cats and everything. So what you get, as you can hear right now, cruising at around 80 kilometers an hour. Quiet. There's no drone, there's nothing. But as soon as you drop a gear and give it some gas, you actually have that feedback and that noise that you want. For me, it is a nice characteristic to have in an exhaust system that's used in your daily driver. Which, this is Kyle's daily driver, so. Solid. I think it's safe to say that my opinions of Hyundai have changed over the years. Or I should say my misconceptions, because it really was an unfair bias I was putting on Korean cars, just kind of assuming that they were all cheap and not dynamically good. But this Genesis, dynamically it's good. It's quite alright. It's fun to drive, and that's really what counts. Especially with a car that looks like this. You know, I think the truth is that Hyundai has been fighting an uphill battle for the last 10 years or so. Not because their cars aren't good, as I've just found out, but because their name hasn't carried much weight for very long. I mean, you look at BMW, Mercedes, Audi, the big three back in Germany, they've got cars spanning decades and decades back. Now, Hyundai is kind of a new kid on the block when you look at it in that sense. And for that reason, I think the Genesis has a lot to prove. And I think it's going to take maybe another generation or two before they really start capturing the market share that they want to. All right, 60 to 100 pull. 100. Not too bad. 306 horsepower. The car weighs about 3,500 pounds. It's not a light car, but it is a GT car. It has back seats, it has the trunk space, and it has a decent sized engine up front. Don't get me wrong, the Genesis is not my favorite looking car. From certain angles, it looks awesome, looks really fantastic. Kind of the back quarter panel, that area is awesome. Not the biggest fan of the styling in general. It has grown on me for sure. But when you're in here, this is what really counts. The driving and your surroundings when you're in here. And from that, it's pretty much flawless. Even just cruising at $4,000 with no throttle, there's zero drone. You just hit the throttle. Nice and loud. The good thing is the car feels quick. That's the point. It's not all about numbers. The car feels quick. I mean, it might just be because I've been driving a Scion IQ for the last week, but the car feels quick, and that's a good point. Any less horsepower than this, and I think it wouldn't deserve the look that it has right now, and the wheels and everything like that. But it fits the look. I think it's the engine is definitely not overpowering the chassis. I think it could take a little bit more power, which the new generation will have, but it's a decent overall package for sure. It's also got a floor-hinged gas pedal, which is something you don't really see very often, and it's something that you really have to get used to. It's got a good feel to it. It's got a very smooth feel to it, for sure. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed our review of the 2010 Hyundai Genesis 3.8 liter V6. It's a good car. If you liked the video, subscribe. Go watch our other videos. We got some really cool stuff coming out. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. Link to the music, I think will be in the description. If not, check our website, which will be coming up. But as always, stay tuned for more, and have a good day.
In the sky, gazing far into the night, I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light